Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Abby?
Morning, Lisa. Morning, Abby. I think I saw David
Lisa.
Boatwright.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yep. How you doing,
Yeah.
David?
Oh, not too bad. You got some different technical thing going on, so hopefully I'll be up on video soon.
Good.
I had that last week.
Good morning, everybody. This is Melissa. You have myself and Cindy this morning. President Balin, we are ready to go when you are.
Thank you. And it looks like we're all present.
Mhm.
So I'll go ahead. It's 9. Is it 9? I'll give it one more minute. There we go. Okay. I'd like to call the regular board meeting of Tuesday, February 8th, 2022 to order at 9 a.m. At this time, Melissa, will you please call the roll?
Okay, Director Balin,
Here.
Director Boatwright,
Here?
Director Kearns,
Here?
Director Murphy.
Here.
Director Ringen.
Here.
Okay, all 5 directors are present.
Thank you. Okay, so before we begin the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like to kindly ask everyone to please put yourself on mute while I deliver the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, we'll open up the public forum. And by the way, I'd like to welcome all the members of the public that are here and who have taken the time to attend this meeting and provide comments on matters related to district business. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any member within the board's, relating to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This need not be related to any item on the agenda. However, the board cannot act on an item unless it was noticed on the agenda. Persons speaking during the public comment will be limited to 5 minutes, or depending on the number of persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board. So at this time, Cindy, is there any member of the public that wishes to address the board?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. Then that will conclude the public forum and we'll move to consent calendar. And Melissa, will you please read the agenda items?
Okay, item number 1, minutes of the regular board meeting of January 25th, 2022, and special board meeting of February 2nd, 2022. Item number 2, approval of reimbursement claims for director statement of meetings attended and/or travel expenses and claim summary for January 2022. And item number 3, consider adopting a resolution making findings in support of continuing remote meetings pursuant to AB 361.
Thank you. Is there any director that wishes to pull one or more of these items? I see Director Boatwright's hand is up.
Madam President, I would like to pull the claim summary.
Thank you. Is there any other director wishes to pull an item for discussion? Cindy, do you see any other members? I do not, but just making sure.
No, I don't see anybody else right now.
Okay, go ahead, Director Boatwright.
Thank you. Let's see if I can scroll down to the page real quick here. My question was on the geotechnical support for the monitoring well water sampling. And I noticed that it definitely still higher than what I recall. And I understand the addition of the additional 5 monitoring wells that were done to satisfy interim water quality constituents with the regional board. But I wondered, is it still in the plans to abandon the 5 wells that were replaced on that to reduce back to the standard number of wells out there at 16 instead of 21?
Director Boatright, I don't see Rich on here, and Eric's off, so I'll attempt. I don't think I can really answer this question, but it sounds like something we should take up in the committee as soon as we can. I don't have an answer for you. Okay. I'm sorry.
And then the other question I have is the JPA insurance. And for the district, and is that a quarterly payment, Steve?
So the workers' comp is quarterly. If that's what you're questioning, there's 2 payments to Aqua JPA. One's just for the regular dental vision life, which is monthly, and then the Aqua JPA for workers' comp, which is quarterly.
Steve, do they also cover our facilities and equipment? The property and liability insurance. I believe it was paid last month, Abby, or the month before. It's an annual payment, and then they do adjustments throughout the year. So okay, so
that is the same one handling our property and liability.
Yeah, the question I have, and I don't know if that's appropriate at this time or where it can be directed to, but in light of our recent tank situation, the one up off of Middle Camp that collapsed, will we end up going through a reassessment on our insurance as far as our facilities because of that?
Abby, I'll throw it over to you. I know we were kind of talking about that yesterday.
Good question, Director Boatright. Not specific to this instance, but we are going to be going through the exercise of a property coverage renewal. Actually, we just got the documents yesterday, so we renew our property coverage is a July to July coverage. Our liability insurance is October to October, and our workers' comp is also July to July. So we renew every year, which what we do is take that property list, which we have a very extensive list that we cover with a fine-tooth comb to make sure everything's properly covered. Anything that has been eliminated or consolidated will be taken off the list. Anything that's been added, we make sure we cover. So we are going through that process right now, and you'll see that we'll pay renewal for the FY23 year in July.
I see Director Murphy has her hand up.
David, you're muted.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I had some background noise, so I muted. Will the board have any involvement with that, Abby, or is it just a report to the board after that's all concluded?
Well, the board will have it'll be during the budget process that you'll see what we're budgeting for the following year, but that's typically a staff exercise to go through the facilities and ensure that we're covering everything appropriately.
Oh, okay. I'll hold any further questions in for the budget meetings. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Murphy.
Yeah, so just a question on the left coast lane clearing for $12,000. Storm cleanup of the ditch and emergency tree in Eureka. Was that when we last meeting we saw where there's a bunch of erosion and stuff on the ditch? Is that where this was?
I'm not sure about the location you're describing, but on the Eureka ditch up, I think in the Confidence area, a large tree, I believe an oak tree, came into the ditch, and it was too large. And there were several other trees that were too large for our crews and our equipment. So we had to bring in this case, left coast with special equipment to get the tree out of the ditch area.
Okay, so it wasn't damage to the ditch. It was just debris in the ditch?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And do we have to do that pretty commonly, or for most of the time can our crews take care of things?
I think 85 or more % of the time we take care of the trees ourselves. But once in a while, they're just too large and just, so remote, and, just need special equipment that we don't have.
Yeah. And so was this just for my edification, does this involve like helicopters, or does this involve on the ground?
Yeah. Not yet. It hasn't. No, not. I'm chuckling because we have rented a helicopter years and years ago to make repairs on the Upper Columbia ditch, but no, not in this case. We just needed special equipment.
Cool. And special equipment would be like winches and cranes or something?
Boy.
Just curious, because
loader, I didn't ask. I wasn't too specific, and I don't remember seeing the pictures, but I don't know if it's a special loader, a skid steer loader. I'm not real sure.
Yeah. Folks, with the reason I'm asking this, just since it was already pulled, folks are asking, maintenance cost and how we actually, how remote things are and how hard it is to get out there and do stuff. And so I think that as these things are coming up, it's good to talk about them.
Yeah, good question.
All right, thanks.
Any other director wish to comment on the claim summary?
Don't
Cindy,
see anybody at this time.
Okay. Any member of the public wish to comment on the claim summary?
Don't have anybody at this time.
Thank you. All right, well then, if there's no further questions or comments, then I'll ask for a motion to approve the claim summary or the consent calendar, 3 items.
I'll move to accept the claim summary.
I would second that.
Thank you, Director Boatwright. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing or hearing none. Melissa, will you please call for the vote?
Okay, just a clarification, Director Ringen, you moved to approve the consent calendar, correct? You said claim summary.
Oh, well, sorry about that. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Balin?
Aye.
Director Boatwright?
Aye.
Director Kearns?
Aye.
Director Murphy?
Aye.
Director Ringen?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I appreciate the comments on the claim summary because it's always instructive. We always learn when somebody has a question on some of those items. That's a lot of money. All right, regular business. Melissa, will you please read the first item?
Okay, item number 4, consider approving a resolution adopting the district investment policy.
Good morning, board members, members of the public in attendance. This is really more of a housekeeping matter than anything else. The investment policy we have in place, it requires us that the policy be formally approved and adopted by resolution of the board of directors on an annual basis. The last investment policy was adopted on November 10th, 2020. In May of 2020, we contracted with Chandler Asset Management to be our investment advisor, to redo our investment policy, to help us with our investment strategies. And you've met before with them, and today we have with us Carlos Oblides, who is our investment manager. Chandler's investment professionals have conducted an extensive review of the district's investment policy to ensure it encompasses the latest requirements of California Government Code section, as well as industry best practices and any management directives. So attached to your packet, you have the resolution that we're asking you to consider. we have the clean copy of the changed policy, and this year we do have one change. Last time, I think we had changes on almost every page. So the third attachment is the red line version, and I believe it's in page 69 of your packet. That is the one page with the change. It's section 6.2, prohibited investments. And again, there's the red line version in there. And I asked Carlos to come to, one, explain what this one change means to all of us, and also to be here if anyone has any questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Carlos. Good morning, Carlos.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning, directors. As Steve stated, there's been quite a bit of work done on this policy from the very beginning when we began working with you. So that was in collaboration with Steve and his team. So the policy is quite robust and continues to be robust. The change we're bringing before you today is as a result of Senate Bill 998, which came into effect at the beginning of 2021. Senate Bill 998 did several things, but among them, it did something that may seem a little bit weird on the face of it, but I want to just give you a brief explanation of it so that when you read this language, you don't think we're crazy. So Senate Bill 998 was written by authors in the state Senate who were fearful that the United States Federal Reserve would pursue an economic policy known as negative interest rate policy. You've heard about this. Most of you have heard about this. They've been pursuing something similar in Japan for several years and in Germany for several years. And the idea is that you lower interest rates so much that interest rates go negative. Now, there's economic reasons for doing that, but if that were to occur in the United States, you would have no places to invest your money where you would actually get a positive accrual, interest accrual. There would be no options for you. Even sticking it in the bank would cost you money. So you're not earning something, you're paying something. So that's very unlikely to happen in the United States. Indeed, we wrote a white paper a while ago on the many reasons why we don't think it's going to happen. And also, given all the stimulus steps that the Federal Reserve took during coronavirus, which were quite successful in many ways, they have many tools before they have to resort to something like negative interest rate policies. But why am I bringing this up? The authors of Senate Bill 998 were fearful that the United States would go down that route. And if they did that, there would be no place for you to earn a positive accrual. And up to that change in the law, there was a prohibition on local governments holding any securities that could result in a zero interest accrual. So Senate Bill 998 updated the law and basically said you're allowed to hold them so long as they are government securities, so U.S. Treasury obligations, which are the safest investment. So when you look at the language, you might read it and say to yourself, why in the world would I want to allow that? Well, it's not that we want to buy securities that might result in a zero interest accrual or a negative accrual. It's simply that if the United States goes down that path, you would have no options. And now the law was changed so that you don't break the law. And we want to update your policy so that if it ever happens, you're not violating your investment policy. So that's it in a nutshell. That's the only change we have for you. It should have no impact on the investments that you're doing now. Indeed, yields in the bond markets are quite quickly on the rise, and we're moving very well away from the low interest rate environment. But this is just a cleanup to make sure that if that ever happens, your policy is prepared. That's what I have for you today. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Is there any director that wishes to address this matter? Cindy, do you see any sign?
I don't see any hands up at this time.
Okay, well, we really appreciate that clarification since we don't want to go down any hole. Thank you. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on this item?
I don't see anyone at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, then with that, is there a recommendation to consider approving the attached, or to approve the attached resolution adopting the district investment policy?
I'll make that motion to approve the resolution to adopt the investment policy.
Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. So it's been moved by Director Kearns and seconded by Director Ringen. Is there any further discussion? Any member of the public wishing to weigh in?
I don't see any hands at this time.
Thank you. All right, then Melissa, will you please call for the vote?
Okay, Director Balin,
Aye.
Director Boatright,
Aye.
Director Kearns,
Aye.
Director Murphy,
Aye.
Director Ringen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And thank you again, Carlos and Chandler Asset Management. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, directors. Have a great morning. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Carlos. Thank you, board.
Thank you, Steve. Always good work. Thank you. All right. Now, Melissa, will you please read the, well, I can go ahead and read item 5 because you gave me a thing to say, so I'm gonna say it. So item number 5 is public hearing considering the proposal to establish the 5 district boundaries for district-based elections. This is the time and place for a public hearing to consider the proposal to establish 5 district boundaries for district-based elections of members of the board of directors. And with that, I will turn this over to the presentation by staff and our consultants.
Thank you. With us is Matt and Fabian. And so nice to see you guys. Thanks for being here. Matt, will you take it away?
Sure. So just to remind you all from our last meeting, we're required to hold 2 public hearings before we introduce maps. And so we went through a very detailed analysis last time of redistricting 101. We don't need to do all that again this time, but it is an opportunity for the public and the members of the directors to be able to comment before we actually produce some draft maps for you to consider. Last time we went through Population Equality, Voting Rights Act, the communities of interest, which anyone's right about because everyone has different views of that, compactness and contiguity. I think the only 2 remaining items, and I don't see the district council on the phone, but Don, I'll ask you to back me up on this, but I believe the follow-up and I believe he sent an email to you all indicating that directors needed to live in the different districts that they drew. So that was one follow-up. The other follow-up that Don sent us before this meeting, I believe said that basically those people who you have contract service with, so people you provide service to that are outside your district boundaries would not be counted in the redistricting process. And so just be within your own political boundary. And I believe that was basically a quick summary from the item in the presentation that was forwarded to me this morning. And that's consistent with what I understand the law to be. So with that, I guess Fabian and I are here to take any questions, and you need to do your public hearing to wait for public comment. But I'm hoping at the end of today, we get some direction either to come back to you all with some different options to consider, or for members of the public to give us ideas to consider as we come back with draft maps at your next meeting.
Go ahead, Director Balin. President Balin.
Thank you. Yesterday, I was talking to a colleague at CCWD because he had put on a presentation. They were doing their redistricting, and he sent me the PowerPoint, which I thought was really instructive, and I just wanted to go over some things that really clarified this process for me. And one of them was the assurance that any change in the division boundaries will not impact any directors any change in the division boundaries will not impact any director's term of office. Each director will remain the director of the division until their term expires, even if the director resides in the boundaries of the new division. So in their case, they are redistricting, and they're not following the supervisorial divisions. They're doing their own thing. And the other thing I wanted to state is and I know, Matt, you said this many times, but it just dawned on me, and that is that the State of California Elections Code Section 22,000, looks like, says in determining new division boundaries, the district may give broad consideration to the following factors, and I'm just repeating what you said, but just to make it clear to the public, et cetera. 1, topography, and 2, geography. 3, cohesive continuity, I think, and integrity and compactness of territory. And 4, community of interest of the division. So it would be trying to keep a community whole. For an example, over in San Andreas, there was some of their maps were looking at dividing San Andreas or Murphy's. And so they were working on keeping those communities whole within the larger boundary. So I just wanted to state those things as we go forward.
Go ahead, Director Boatright.
Thank you. Question, in regards to the redistricting as a whole, how far down this road are we? Are we committed to actually doing this at this point in time?
Yeah, a couple of months ago, Director Boatright, the board voted to transition from at-large to by division.
Okay, what was it, a commitment vote though, or was it a vote to retain our consultant on this and explore this, or it is an actual commitment at this point in time because of a resolution?
That's the way I understand it, Director Boatright. You already elected or voted to transition from at-large to by division.
Okay. A comment along these lines of going through the redistricting process. I've just been trying to run through in my mind with our current directors. Basically, the districts are drawn out of a hat, and a director and a district for our new map is drawn, and that director for this interim process, regardless of whether they live in that district or not, is representative of that district. And in looking at how our, we have 2 directors voted on one election cycle, and then 3 directors elected on the following cycle. It just, I was wondering if we thought this all the way through as far as how the district's seats will open and close depending on election cycle, and how we enter into this phase. Once established, it works. Looking for representatives from each of these 5 districts that will be developed. I'm not sure if I explained that quite right, but it's certainly an observation that I've been trying to run through to see how this process will actually play out. Thank you.
Well, I think I might understand at least part of your question or concern, and then Matt or Fabian, you can jump in there too. But so as far as I know, the election cycles, the 2 and the 3 on opposite years, right? Every other year. That's not going to change in this process at all. So if you're in the middle of your 3-year term or the beginning of your 3-year term, the way I understand it, regardless of this this division base, you'll finish your 3-year term.
It's a 4-year term, right?
4-year term. Maybe I can explain it a little bit better. I myself, as a director, live in between the Sonora and Columbia area. My district that is drawn through this first process may actually be, say, the Willow Springs, East Sonora area, and I do not live in that area. So once my term ends in 2024, the Willow Springs, East Sonora district will open up looking for a director from the East Sonora, Willow Springs area, whereas I would not be able to rerun for that zone. And now, because of the way our odd processes are, the seat for the Sonora Columbia area may not be open at that point in time, which is where I reside. So, that leads me back to my original question of, had we actually moved through how this would change our election process and how far down the road were we committed to actually doing this?
So can I take a shot at that? So Director Boatwright, you are going to, if 5 districts were drawn, you're going to live in one of them, right? I mean, just because you live in the district, you're going to end up living in one of them. We don't know what number, and your board will get to decide what number it is, and then also which election it's going to be brought up in. So in your case, it sounds like you were elected in 2020. Is that correct? So in 2020, where that happened, you're duly elected. You get to serve your 4-year term no matter what. That the redistricting is not going to change that. Where you'll end up having a choice is, if your home is in a district and you're not planning on moving to do this and you're going to stay in your place, your district could be up in 2022 or 2024. If it's up in 2022, you could run for that seat. And if you were to be elected, you would need to resign your at-large seat, and your board then would have to go through whatever process they go through in succession planning. If your district that you live in is not up until 2024, well, then in 2024, you could declare your candidacy for that seat and seek election in that new seat in 2024. Just like you could do the same thing in 2022. The only complication would be you would have to leave your at-large seat in 2022 if you sought election for a district seat. Does that make sense, sir?
Yes, it did. Thank you very much, Matt. I just kind of wanted to bring this discussion to the table as I was, thinking it through in my mind, and this come up on the agenda. So thank you very much.
So one thing, sir, so then there's the inverse of that too. So say somebody was up for election in 2022, they could have a seat. If they lived in a seat and the area where they lived was up in 2022, well, they could seek election for that. If the districts were set up in such a way that there was no seat where they lived that was up for election in 2022, well, then their seat would end, and then they could choose to seek election in 2024, but there would be an interruption there in that service.
Thank you. Director Murphy, you're next.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify, just for the public, that when we were talking about the vote was not unanimous. It was a 3-2 vote to move forward on this process. So just to be clear about that. And then also on, just to follow up, that was what I raised my hand for, but to follow up with this discussion that we're currently on. So the two, just to put things in real terms, Director Ringen and Director Kearns, their positions come up in the November 2022 election. Director Boatwright, Director Balin, and myself come up in the 2024. So, so for 2022, we're expecting this process to be done in plenty of time for it to affect the 2022 elections, is question number 1 on this. And I see a head nod, so I'm guessing that that's the answer. And if so, would the natural assumption be, and Director Kearns, I don't actually know where you live, but if by chance the districts were created in a way that Director Ringen and Director Kearns lived in the same district, only one of them could get that seat. They'd be running against each other, and then the other seat would be open to whoever wanted to run. Is that how that would work?
If the board chose to adopt district lines with 2 board members who were termed out in 2022, only one of them would be able to remain in service to the board once that election was held.
Okay, and then in the 2024, depending on how it all, David Boatwright, Director Boatwright, Director Balin, and myself could all end up in the same district, and we could end up in the same thing, that we're down to us all running against each other in one district, and and then other districts being needing to find people to run.
Well-
So just because I think geographically, Director Boatright, Director Balin, and I think it is a possibility. So it's interesting when we're thinking about this, because what we want to do is adopt the best boundaries for the long run, but it will have consequences in the short run. And so just to make sure in this process that we are looking for the best long-term boundaries and not getting caught up on what that means in the short term would be my request. Which is a hard request because people's lives are personally involved in this, the people who will be voting on it.
Thank you, Director Murphy. Director Balin, you're up.
Thank you. Yeah, I absolutely agree. We need to look at the long run on this transition. And what I ended up doing was, see, this happened in a different way. When I first got on the board, and this might be instructive, we were on an odd year election cycle, and the district was spending about $48,000 just to get the material printed. And so to get the board to convert to even aged years, so we were on the same election cycle as the county, therefore saving the district some money, some of us that were in a staggered 4-year thing, added a 5th year to 2 of us. So I actually served 5 years, and people were wondering what this was going to be, but once we made the transition, now we're saving the district and have been saving the district for the last 15 years, at least $48,000, $50,000 a year. So the transitioning, and I'm just going to say this, the other day I was walking the Oakdale Irrigation Canal and I got interested in the canal, and then I got on their website, and Director Boatright, this might be helpful to you, is I would encourage you to go on OID website, because they did this transition. Now, mind you, they're an irrigation district, they're focused on irrigation, but they adopted, like we did, they voted to transition to district-based in 2017. Their whole little thing is on there, all their maps that they ended up voting on, and now each director has a number beside their name of the division or the district that they're from. But I would encourage you, David, to go on OID, and now they have just completed their first election cycle. Call one of these directors, ask them about it. How did it work? And just do some research yourself. There's another amazing little website, the City of Roseville. Again, this is a city that divided into divisions, and they have a great accounting of it on their website, because it is, we are in the middle of doing something I think extremely important for the district, and we really want to think ahead, like Director Murphy said, for the long run. And but we are moving this way. We've been advised by legal counsel to move this way, and so that's what we're doing. But again, OID, it's just a great little blurb. It's not daunting, and check it out, and then call some of those directors.
Well, thank you, President Balin. Go ahead, Director Kearns.
Yeah, Matt, I just wanted to revisit Director Murphy's scenario she posed here just a second ago, and I'll be sure that I understand it correctly. So Director Ringen and myself, that's correct. We're up, our seats are up for election in November. So they would be based on whatever we come up with for districts. The other 3 seats, Directors Balin, Murphy, and Boatright. So did I hear that they will continue to be at large until 2024? Did I hear that correctly?
Well, yes, if they were to remain, because there won't be an election until then. So you will remain at large until the end of 2022, and the other 2 directors, as I understand it, will remain at large until 2024, unless they seek election in the 2022 election for a seat that's there. And then I would just point out, if you were need to replace one of them because they sought elections, you would also be able to choose anyone to fill the remainder of that term from the entire district. It wouldn't just be for the individual district, it would be from your entire utility district.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're going to come up with, at some point, we're going to direct you to come up with some maps, correct? And
Yes,
then we'll be able to take those maps, discuss them, and possibly make changes. Is that what'll happen, or?
Yeah, so, well, we're going to do whatever you ask us to do or direct us to do, but historically, or with the other folks that we work with, generally after a meeting like this, either people give us some thoughts and we try to work those into different versions, but we might come back with 3 or 5 or 7 different options for you to look at. And I know that you, Director Kearns, asked about the supervisorial district boundaries, and those, we could easily put those on the map so you could see exactly where those are and adjust the populations accordingly. But then the idea would be is that we might find one that a majority of the board would say, hey, we kind of like map version 3. Let's see if we can make a few edits to it to get it to where we want. Director Murphy is correct in terms of that hypothetically could happen, but I have not worked with a board that has decided to put 2 directors in one seat and 3 directors in another seat to leave 3 open seats. I've never seen that happen. But it could. I mean, hypothetically, if that's what you wanted to vote for, you could do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Director Kearns. Hey, Matt, when you and I first met, you sort of explained to me, at least I think, it's been a little bit now, on just what that looks like when you propose some maps. When we do this live, when you're proposing a couple of maps. Just how will we, or the board, I should say, not we, the board, sort of interact with you on that process of, well, this line and that line.
So Fabian, do you have like Barstow up you can show them, or some other example we could use of the Google Map version?
You want me to show them Google Map version? Sure. Give me one second.
And so the answer to that question is, and I bring up Barstow because I was in lovely Barstow last night helping the city council do their redistricting, and I just offer it up as an example, and it's a public document. And so what we've done is we give not only a PDF version, but we also do a Google Map version, so people can drill in terms of the different districts as they might like to see them. And the Google Maps is pretty cool because the satellite version allows people to say, well, hey, where's the, which district is the Del Taco in, or whatever they might be interested in, to be able to take a look at it. So you got that, Fabian? I can pull it up if you don't. All right, hold on. Let me find it here. Oh, and actually I just had it up. So yeah. And so can you all see my map?
Yes.
Yes.
Not on my screen. So, for example, we have for the city of Barstow, and I feel comfortable doing this, it's not any sort of privileged information. The city council of Barstow has 4 city council members and a popularly elected mayor. And I know that's not the case for you all, but you can see in the black lines here are their existing council lines. And so we use those so the council members individually can be able to take a look at where their existing lines are. One of the cool provisions of this is being able to use Google Maps, as I said, and if people want to know where the McDonald's is or Burger King or whatever, they can focus in on where that is. But then for the different scenarios, this is one map that was created for, and we would do something similar to you at your direction, where people can see the 4 different proposed districts. And they have a little bit of an odd shape for their city boundary, but that is the city boundary. But then if you click on the district, you're able to take a look at the district population or district number. The deviation is 0 in this case, so it's exactly perfectly the population deviation is 0. They have the census count and the CVAP numbers that we talked about for the different ethnicities to be able to take a look at it. And so the district, then we have 4 different scenarios here. People can choose individual districts to look at the demographic information. They can zero in on the area, and they can put different lines over it. And in your case, Director Kearns, at your request, we would have supervisorial district boundaries over there for you to be able to take a look at. And so we have different scenarios that you can compare and highlight whatever you might like to look at to zero in on a district and be able to learn the demographic information, the numbers, and be able to take a look at it. But if you were to give us direction to come back with some suggestions for you, we'd come back with 3 or 4, 5, whatever different options for you to consider. And then at a future meeting, to directly answer Don's question, you might say, well, hey, Matt and Fabian, we don't like this boundary. This really should be over here. Can you work to try to get us a line that takes this red district out to Armory Road or whatever? Because north of it should be in the red district, not the yellow or blue or whatever. And then we would come back to you at a future meeting with adjustments to whatever map you decide that you like or don't like. But you can see we have 4 different options for them. They have some CBAP or Voting Rights Act implications, but that you don't. But that's the way we would present it to you, as well as PDFs for you to be able to have and look at. But most people tend to really like the Google Maps.
Thank you, Matt. And I wanted to just say what's not on that map are specific addresses of the directors that are residing in those districts. Right? That's important to know. Okay, thank you. Director Murphy, hi.
Hey, yeah, so I'm going to back us up to before that last thing, when I raised my hand, was about MAP's response is exactly the concern that I have. So if districts, when deciding the district lines, miraculously have no problem with all the districts, with all the representatives falling into different districts, that's a human self-preservation thing, right? It doesn't miraculously happen every time that all of the elected officials that were elected under a different system miraculously end up in different districts. And so that's a concern that I have, is that we develop maps based on who the directors are and keeping the ability for those people to I understand that at large we retain our seats until it's our turn to rerun. But anyway, it's Matt's answer to that reinforces the fact that that is, if the board that's voting on it has skin in the game, it's going to influence the game. And so just being aware of that and pointing out that bias, and then Matt's thing 100% shows that is what happens, because otherwise you couldn't miraculously have everybody on the board end up in different districts. So just a concern that I have as we move forward in this process, to make sure that we are making the fairest districts for moving forward, and sort of not taking into consideration where the current board members are residing and what that would mean for that, I think, is my request.
I want to add to that, actually, just to kind of jump on with that. We've done this in a lot of districts, cities, and different places, and we've found that, so if, say we're given the task to provide formats, in a lot of cases, in every case, we don't know where anybody lives. We're not looking at that. We just draw the maps based on communities we see, natural roadways, boundaries, these types of things. In a lot of cases, 3 out of 4 times, those maps actually do keep people in different districts without us even knowing where anybody lives. And then sometimes it'll be one map that puts people together. I'm not saying that's in every case. We've definitely drawn maps where in every map people were put together. But normally, yeah, when we're drawing just different versions, just because typically in a lot of cases, now, Director Murphy, you'd mentioned that some people might live near each other. I have no idea, but typically in a lot of these cases, people do live in different areas of these overall districts. So when we draw maps, we're drawing based on, okay, we think this road in this community should be in here. And then it's surprisingly, okay, there's only one director in that one. So sometimes it happens. We don't know yet because we haven't shown you anything. So I want to be clear that, you may get 4 maps, 5 maps. And in 3 of them, it does keep people separate, and in 1 of them it doesn't. Or it could be vice versa, where in 3 it doesn't keep them separate, and 1 it does. And the only reason I'm saying all this is to, when you guys are, when the board as a whole is going to vote on moving forward, making adjustments, whatever, yes, definitely keeping in mind, long term is more important than your short term. And there's skin in the game and looking interesting. But just because a map keeps people in separate districts shouldn't necessarily disqualify it from being a valid map that you consider. I just want to throw that out there, because then oftentimes you'll look at these and say, oh yeah, we're in different districts, and it actually looks like a good map and it keeps the communities we want together. So not saying you have to adopt it, I just don't want you to throw it out because the fact that people are all in different districts.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And if you listen to what I said, that's what I was saying. Just be fair, think of the long-term thing and discount that factor. Don't use it as a positive or a negative. Look at the bigger whole for the better future of our county and our water district. And that's what we're trying to move forward doing. And so just, there's a lot of pitfalls in it because we are the ones voting, on it. So public involvement is super important.
Thank you, Director Murphy.
Any further comments from directors?
I don't see any hands at this time.
Okay. Well, with that, I will then open it up to the public. Cindy, is there any public comment on this matter?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Were any written comments received?
No public written comments were received.
Was that a yes or a no? I'm sorry.
No written public comments were received.
Okay, thank you. Okay. If there is nothing further to be presented relating to this item, I now declare the public hearing closed. Okay, and thank you, Fabian. Thank you, Matt. This concludes.
Did any of you have any direction or things you wanted us specifically to look at, or do you just want us to use our best judgment and come back with some different options for you to consider? How would you like us to proceed?
But like you mentioned earlier, I know for one, we'd like to see the supervisory boundaries as one option. But other than that, I personally, I know this is a board decision, not a GM decision, but without having to see something, it would be difficult for me to make any suggestions. But I see Director Murphy has her hand up.
Yeah, I just want to go back to, and I'm going to ask President Balin to kind of reiterate the reason that we're doing the redistricting, and it was for particular reasons to make sure that we were being that people were fairly represented. So
not necessarily. This is, you know what, I don't want to go back to that. We are now moving forward. We have in our election code, for whatever the reason, Director Murphy, there's a financial reason. I would like to move on with the topography, geography, cohesiveness, and community of interest in how we divide. We've closed the public hearing, and I think if we go forward with our next meeting, we can take that up with some maps that Matt provides for us.
So I'm still making my request. What I'm asking is to clarify what you had said in previous meetings of why we were doing this, as far as that would give direction to Matt as to what we're asking him to do. And so I mean, I could look it up in the minutes and find out exactly what was said, but you had really specific reasons for why you thought we would be susceptible to legal action, and it was about representation. And I can't put my finger on it right now. I was hoping that you could, but it was the reason why we're going into this. And so that, I feel, is the direction we need to give Matt. But it was your words and your thoughts, so I thought I would have you say it rather than me try to remember what you said.
The only thing I can recall right now is that geographically, the people in this community in Tuolumne County, we use our water for different needs, and we have the West End. Again, it's topography and geography. We have a ranching community in the West End, and then up in Twain Harte, we don't have the same use of water, and statistically, well, TUD has the data to show the water usage. So, you know, it would be community-wide representation. We have very distinct communities, including our historic hamlets. And so the communities of interest, again, like how they're dividing San Andreas, they're making it a point to keep that community whole. So I think those things are very important. Matt and Fabian, when you go forward, to keep those communities whole if you can. I know that the supervisorial districts worked hard. Columbia seemed to be really divided up, and I think they made that whole in the supervisorial redistricting, just things of that nature.
And so I guess in that question, was there a race and ethnicity piece, or is it more that we're asking them to look at functionality?
Well, the authorities, if you want to go back to the authorities for the Voting Rights Act, they talk about protected classes. When you look at the state of California elections code section for this, they also include topography, geography, cohesiveness, and integrity, compactness of territory, community of interest of the division. So I would say it's all of that all together. So we have different genesis for creating this, including a definite, what would you call it, interest in not getting sued over this as well.
And that's a piece that I don't understand. I don't understand who would be suing and why. But we want to make sure that the maps are created in a way that is the whole point of this was protect the district from that. So just making sure that we are giving direction that makes it clear to Matt and his team as far as what we think, because President Balin, you know this county and this these different special interest groups, and so just as far as direction going forward, kind of what we're looking for in that, because I know that like the population seat of the county, as far as the most concentrated area is the city of Sonora is the biggest concentrated area of humans, and so it's going to get tricky as far as where keeping the correct, staying within that 5% of variation, while keeping, getting the lines to the places that make the best sense for the county in the long run. So just any information that directors can think of on that, I think is probably useful for the team that is attempting to draw lines on a county that they are not familiar with.
I appreciate your points. I think they're very well taken, and I think that Matt and Fabian have a sense of where we want to go based on their experience of dividing up other communities. And again, it is the board's decision to look at these selection based on what they come up with and really get into the, where the rubber meets the road and really look at the long term, like you said, what's the fairest as we transition to this process. So Matt and Fabian, do you need more information from us, or do you have a good idea of?
Well, we'll give it a shot with whatever, and with the information that we had, the comments that we've heard, and we can touch base with Don and others, before our next meeting and make sure we're not, completely out of the ballpark, and we'll try to get there. And once again, you very well may have lots of adjustments when we present these maps to you. You might say, well, we like map 4, but we have a couple things that we want to adjust on there. That's fine, and we'll be happy to do that. But our intent isn't to try to give you have to choose one of 5 options or 3 options. Our intent is to start the conversation, guide it to a particular area, and then be able to adjust accordingly. And this board has the full authority to be able to do that.
Right. This is an iterative process. We're going to give you a version of maps, a few different versions. You can look at them. You can hate some, you can love some, you can hate all, you can love all. And then you can give us adjustments that would better reflect the communities that need to either be together or need to have different water use scenarios, as you mentioned, Director Balin. So that is basically how we'll move forward once we provide you with the first round of what we call draft maps.
Thank you. Director Kearns.
Yeah, just to as a little bit of an answer to Director Murphy, I was extremely suspicious of this. I was uncomfortable at first in getting my support behind the item back in October. However, it was the reason I supported this is so that we wouldn't get sued by these aggressive attorneys who go up and down the state and come after districts who don't follow this. What is it, Map? It's the California Voters' Right Act.
That's right, the California Voting Rights Act.
And much like some of these attorneys do that Director Reagan and I spoke about, where they come around to commercial buildings and make sure they're ADA compliant and all that kind of stuff. So that's where the savings to the district came in. But I find it very comforting that Matt and Fabian have not found out where we all live and have our addresses, and that these maps that they're going to come up with from the get-go will be maps that were calculated for all the right reasons that I believe you're talking about, Director Murphy, and we can start from there. We have to have a starting point at some point, and I think that's as good a point as we can get. And who knows? Who knows? I mean, it's theoretically possible we could all wind up in the same district, although I doubt it. But it will be very interesting to see what you guys come up with. And like Fabian said, we may love them all, we may hate them all, but we got to start somewhere.
To be clear, you're more likely to hate them all, but yes.
Director Murphy.
Yeah, just another clarification. Is this completely a decision of the directors, or is there public involvement in the choosing the maps?
Well, the public could be involved in any process. They can submit maps, they can submit testimony, they can submit their own map. They might, just like any other sort of public hearing, they could say, we don't like map 3 that you all are considering. We like map 2 and would like the following adjustments. But in the end, the decision comes down to the board. It's a question of the majority of the board casting a vote for a particular map.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that clarification.
If it's okay, I might just add, for me, I know I live in a pretty optimistic world, looking for the brighter side of things. And this isn't the first time somebody said this, but ideally we are looking long term. I know that the hearts and interests of U5 are in the best interest of the county as a whole. I get that, but and same with me. And so ideally, we can divide these divisions up. Ideally, all 5 of you are in a different division. And then as we go down the road and there's new elections, you're not necessarily competing against each other. And so is that when we're all 5 or 8 of us, all of our back here, we don't have that hanging around us. So anyway, that's just me and my little idealistic world. I'm pretty optimistic about these things. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
My worry is that we weigh that too heavily and don't make the best choice. And so, because that's what humans do.
Right.
And so when it's left to the 5 people who will be voted in, there is a certain amount of bias that is embedded in this. And if we don't recognize that, we'll fall into that trap. And so that is just, if you recognize bias, you can weigh that in. If you don't recognize it and you just think, I'm sorry, but if you think we just live in a world where everything will work out, it works out because of our biases. And we drive it in that direction. And so the piece of recognizing your biases and recognizing if that is a factor in why you're choosing these boundaries, check yourself on that and decide if your vote is for that because it makes it work clean and neat for the moment, or if it's really what you think 10 years down the line will really matter. Because once we put these things in, I know that you can go through this process again and adjust it, but likely once we put it in, we just stick with it. And this is what the district, this is how the district is run. So again, Don, what you said, and it's the same thing what Matt said, you guys are reinforcing what my concern is, right? Because you're reinforcing that is human nature wants it all to work out. And we want, so it's just a bias to be aware of and for the directors to keep in mind that we're talking about the reasons why these boundaries are good for the long term of the county. Cool.
Yep.
Thank you. I think the point has been well made, and if there's no further discussion, the hearing has been closed, and that concludes regular business, and we'll move to staff reports. Who would like to go first?
Thank you, Matt and Fabian. Take care.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Fabian, very, very much.
Director Balin, I don't have a staff report today.
Thank you. Anyone else? Steve, I think Steve's still here.
Yep, here. I don't have anything for the board unless there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Abby.
I wish I had something interesting. No, everything's going really good. We're busy. No staff report today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all of us. President Balin, Eric Hall is out on an inspection out at Phoenix Lake, and Eric Johnson's out of the office. So that's all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then we'll go with the director's reports and communications. Who would like to go first? I see Director Ringen, you unmuted. That might be a sign.
I think Director Boatwright beat me with his hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Director Boatwright.
I can be casual either way. Director Ringen, if you'd like to go.
Okay, let's get it underway then. So on 127, had my phone interview, and it was pretty lengthy with Matt from Raftellus. Had a chance to be able to question him as much as he questioned me, and it's going to be very interesting how that's going to get rolled out, and it's also very interesting on how they're going about it in order to get a plan for the community education on our acquisition of PG&E. It's I wasn't real sold on Raftellus, but I'm starting to think that might have been a really good choice. So staff, you did a good job. You directed us in the right direction, I think. Also on 127, had my monthly meeting with GM Perkins. That also was incredibly interesting. We went up and visited the collapsed tank in Twain Harte, and I made my own personal inspection of the issue, and we'll find out when the official one comes in whether I'm in the ballpark or not. But it certainly looked like to me that that was due to several different things. One, it being very cold. Most of all, that there was a ton of snow on top of it, and it just, I think that's probably what's going to come back. You should see how that tank got ripped apart. It was really incredible to me. We also looked at a water main pipe replacement that the crews were working on. That was pretty interesting. Then on 2-1, we had, I participated in the wastewater committee meeting, and I'm not going to say anything on that. I'll leave that to Director Boatwright because he's the chairman. So that's it for me.
Director Boatwright?
Thank you. Pretty much the same thing along Director Ringen's. I had my phone interview with Matt from Raftellus. It was quite lengthy, but very good in nature. And then the wastewater committee, we only had 2 items on the agenda. One will be coming to the board on our next board meeting as a variance recommended for approval. And the other one was to move forward with a annual reclamations meeting prior to the start of irrigation season this year. So that's all I have.
Thank you, David. Any other reports?
Director Murphy has her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so as with the rest of you, had my interview with Matt from Rough Tellis. That was they're very professional. They're very he did a great job of asking questions and probing about all of our thoughts and directions that we think are important to our community, questions that our community has brought up to all of us. So I think that that's a great start for things. And I went with GM Perkins, invited him to come out to that beginning of the West Side Trail. A handful of people have pointed out to me, I'm out there a reasonable amount, the damage that was, the erosion damage from where the pipe crosses that first, probably, what would you say, 200 meters of the trail, Don? Yeah. And just for folks who have brought that up and are listening to this meeting remotely, that Don is aware of it and he's on it, and we'll see what happens. So just wanted to, yeah, if you have anything else to add to that, Don, you're welcome to.
It was a great meeting. We met out there for better than an hour. Besides the topic of so there's a section of piped ditch, the Eureka ditch, that crosses over the old West Side train tracks. Can't think of the darn name.
Logging operation, train tracks.
And
yeah.
now it's a very well populated trailhead. It walks out. It's really nice. So anyway, we talked about that, but we talked about a number of things. So it was a good visit. We talked a lot about, which seems to be one of my favorite topics anymore, is fuels, shaded fuel breaks and proper thinning and maintenance. I'm learning an awful lot about that. I know Director Bailey and Director Murphy have a lot of insight and a lot of expertise, and it's caused me to go do my own research and really compare notes. And I'm really trying hard, believe it or not, to get the county to have a little kind of a joint meeting with me. And I'd like to get everybody's thoughts on the table on this. So anyway, yes, Director Murphy, was a good meeting. Thank you. Go ahead, Director Kearns, you're up.
Yeah, same thing with the Ref Tellis meeting. I met with Matt as well on the 26th, and very similar observations that all of you spoke about. So I won't go on about that anymore. And then Dawn, you and I had our monthly call. It wasn't on our normal date. I know we called, I don't remember the exact date now, but I know that we spoke and spent quite a bit of time on the phone, and I appreciate those conversations with you, and I thank you for making time for me. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, I'll go. I too met with Matt from Ralph Tellis, and it was really great back and forth. It was really wonderful. I also went out with Chris Trott and Don to look at some vegetation management projects around, and Donna was that the Brentwood facility?
The Brentwood tank and old treatment plant, yes.
That was it, right. It's right up against National Forest land, and so we can only do what we can do on our side, but I just wanted to publicly say that Chris Trott and his group and whoever he contracted with to do the vegetation management did an excellent job, and they did some mastication, and they created shaded fuel break. They didn't overcut on these oaks and overstimulate their regrowth. They put material on the ground, not exactly lop and scatter, but some kind of shredding and chipping and whatnot to protect the soil. There was kind of a slope there, and so a really great job that they were doing, and I believe that was a grant. And of course, I want to thank Lisa Westbrook for facilitating all that, and she's also working with getting the Forest Service attention to do their vegetation management on the other side of the fence. Again, we want to look at it as vegetation management because I sent Don an article on how this lulls us into a false sense of security when you've got embers flying around. And so it's complicated for sure. But at any rate, great job. Tomorrow, later on today, I meet with, by phone, Mountain County Water Resources Director or Executive Director, Justin Caparoso, regarding, we had an individual move off of our board, and so we've got some board vacancies, and typical of mountain counties, we want to make sure that we have broad representation through the whole region. So I'll be talking with him today on that, and that's about all I have to report. Any other comments this time? Okay, seeing none.
Director Ringen does.
All right, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you real quick, President Balin, do you know whether or not you folks this afternoon are going to be discussing what the legislative, those of us in the legislative committee brought up, and be putting your input into it? Not just you, but the whole board of
Yes,
Mountain
yeah, everybody shares the concern.
Okay, great. I'm really getting antsy to move forward on that, and so that we are going to be of some sort of use for mountain counties, because for the past 2.5 years, we haven't really done anything. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I believe that concludes our regular board meeting of February 8th, 2022. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Take care.
All right, see you guys.
Hi, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, and thank you. Have a good week.
You too.
Same to you.